The second point I want to make, based upon this simple maths equation for life, that thoughts equals feelings equals behaviors, which creates a predicted result, is the following. We've already discussed that the mind doesn't know what's true, and we have to ask ourselves the question, what are we putting into our mind? But this is the second point that I want to make. And it's a really powerful life principle to live by, and I find that many people don't necessarily live by this concept, and therefore they are enslaved and out of control. They're enslaved to what happens to them. And the point is like this. Life is not about what happens to us, because it all comes down to our thinking. It's not about what happens, but rather it's the thinking about what happened. And the way I know that to be true is because if it was based upon what happened, then we would see absolute rules, which means as follows. If someone got into a car crash, then we'd have an absolute rule that if it was about the event, if it was about the car crash, we'd have an absolute rule that says people would never get in cars again, or people would get back in cars again. But we know that's not true. We hear stories of hearing two people in the car crash and one never gets in a car again and one does. So it can't be the car crash, because if it was, then we would have a predicted result based upon the event. But it's got nothing to do with the event. Yes, events can be painful. They can be painful. But how we deal with the event will determine what we do with it. Will we grow from it? Will we expand from it? Or are we going to suffer? Or are we going to shrink from it? And that will be determined by this life mathematical equation: thoughts, thinking, emotion, and behavior. It all comes down to the way that we analyze the event. But a lot of people have this idea that, well, it's not my fault, or I can't do anything about it because this happened to me. And that's just not true, because there are many people who had the same experience as you, and they are acting very, very differently. So what's the difference between you and them, or between two people? It's the way that they think about the event. You can have two people who've been, had a breakup in a relationship. One says, I'm never getting into a relationship again, and one says, I am. Well, it can't be the relationship breakup that determines their outcome. Otherwise, again, we would see absolute rules. It's their thinking about the relationships. It's what they focus on. It's about what they focus on. Is one focusing on how things can go wrong and how badly things went, and therefore they're going to see how that can happen again, and that will therefore create a feeling of fear, which will create a predicted result. They probably won't want to commit to another relationship. But if one focuses on what they can take from the relationship, what they, in a sense of growth, what they need to work on, where they went wrong, and how they can better themselves, then they're probably going to come to the feeling of feeling comfort. They're going to feel secure. They're going to feel safe, and therefore going to create a predicted outcome and result of going back in and trying to find another relationship that they can commit to. It's not about the event. It's not about the event. And I hear people say to me, but Joe, this happened to me. And I'm like, okay, it happened to you. It's not the event. I want to know what you're thinking about the event. And then when we explore this equation, they start to realize that they've put too much emphasis on what happened and not on how they thought about what happened. The events of our lives do not shape us. Our thinking shapes us. It's not the event, it's us. If we think it's the event, then we really have no free choice. We're literally at the mercy of this massive world where there are billions of interactions every single day, billions of moving parts. What's the point of trying? I mean, what's the point of trying? I mean, something can happen to me, and if it's all about the event, then I'm completely out of control. Yes, some events are painful, but it's not the determining factor. The determining factor is the way that we think about the event. Otherwise, we're completely enslaved to what people do to us and what we experience and what happens to us. And through our upbringing, which was totally out of our control because we don't get to choose our parents, and we don't get to choose what they necessarily do to us and what they give us, what they don't give us. I mean, that just means we're scarred for life without any opportunity to change. And that's just not true, because you can see two kids who come through an abused home, and one will continue that abuse, unfortunately, to their kids, and one won't. So it can't be their abusive or unhealthy upbringing. It's not the event. We have to make this really clear. We have to put a divide. We have to put a clear line, a clear separation between ourselves and what we experience. We have to make that clear division. We have to make really clear that the event does not hold me to ransom. The event does not control me. Yes, they can be painful. What controls my outcome, what controls my quality of life, is going to come down to how I think about the event. I remember hearing this great story where these two kids were brought up by an alcoholic father. Two kids were brought up by an alcoholic father, and one turned into an alcoholic, and the other one never touched alcohol in his life. And they went to the son who was an alcoholic, and they said, "Tell me, why are you an alcoholic?" And he goes, "Well, what do you expect when I had a father who was an alcoholic?" Okay? And then they went to the son who never touched alcohol, and they said, "How come you never touched alcohol?" And he replied, "What do you expect when I was brought up by an alcoholic father?" Right? It was not about the event. It was about how they saw their father was an alcoholic. The first son who touched alcohol said, "Well, my father's an alcoholic. I'm going to learn from his behaviors." Learned behavior, we model what we see, and therefore I am. The second son said, "Well, what do you expect? You think I'm going to touch alcohol after I saw my father's lifestyle and the disarray and negativity and just awful stuff that happened and complete lack of fulfillment and joy because he was addicted to alcohol, he was an alcoholic? Of course I'm never going to touch alcohol again." They both had a different response. They both had different thinking about the fact their father was an alcohol. But if it comes down to the event, as I said before, we're going to have these absolute rules. It's not the event. It's the way that we think about the event. But as long as we think the event, it's all about the event. I can't change because of what happened to me. I can't do this because I haven't got this. I can't get a career because I haven't got an education. We're blaming the events of our lives. We're being held to ransom by what happened to us instead of thinking, okay, I had that happened to me. What am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? I'm going to focus on what I want to get, not focusing on what happened to me. And we're drawing healthy narratives from, not positive. I'm not into creating positive deluded thinking that everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be marvelous. I'm not into that type of stuff. I'm into practical. Because when you think practical, you also get the positive. When you just think too positively, many of the times it's not actually practical, right? We've got to be practical. So what practical narrative, healthy, balanced narrative are we going to draw from the events that are going to support us in the way that we want to live life, in our vision for life? Because if we don't do that, and we start blaming the event, or we start drawing out a disempowering, unbalanced, and unhealthy narrative, it's going to hold us to ransom. It's going to hold us back, because that's going to create a predictive, from that thinking, it's going to create a predictive feeling and a predictive outcome, which is going to impact the quality of our lives. So that's the question the question I want to leave you with is as follows. If we think about some of the events in our lives, have I been putting too much emphasis on what happened? Have I been really thinking along the lines of, well, this happened to me and therefore I can't do anything? I'm a victim to what happened. It's all the event's problem. It's all the thing that someone else did to me. I can't change, or I have to feel this way, or I can't do things because what someone else said or someone else did, or because I lost my job or I lost a relationship. Am I putting all the emphasis on what happened? Or I'm putting all the emphasis on, one second, how am I seeing the event? How am I deciphering the event? What am I churning out from the equation of life? Is it balanced? Is it seeing the whole picture? What am I telling my mind? And when we really begin to own this equation, and we're going to go into this a lot deeper in other videos as well, this is the basis for a deep, healthy, and really meaningful transformation.